Hello, welcome to Eloise of Odyssey 43 deck saloon. The idea of this presentation is not to be a slick and polished presentation with whizzy graphics and special effects, but rather a virtual handover for the skipper and first mate to explain how all the major functions work on the boat whilst maintaining social distancing. At some point there is a code word embedded in this video, and you will be asked to repeat it as evidence that you have watched the video from end to end. At any time you can start, stop, pause, rewind or begin again this video, and once you have watched it from end to end, please return the tablet to the office along with any questions you may have, and we'll be delighted to help you. Now let's go to the boat and start by having a look at the engine. Welcome aboard Eloise. The first thing we're going to have a look at is the engine, which is located behind the companionway steps, which just fold forwards after undoing the top two catch bolts. The most important thing to check for when starting the engine is that adequate cooling water is coming out of the exhaust. If it isn't, the first place to look is the water strainer, which is here. This filters any large particles out of the incoming cooling water for the engine, and if a jellyfish or a plastic bag is picked up, it will be in this strainer. The top is just hand tight. Lift the strainer basket out, tip whatever it is in the bilge and put the top back on. Normally this cures the problem. If it doesn't, then you'll have to have a look at the water pump, which we'll look at next. The water pump is the bronze pump at the bottom of the engine, located here. If this has had the rubber blades of the impeller burnt out because of a lack of cooling water, then it's just a question of removing the faceplate, pulling out the remains of the old impeller, putting a new one in out of the engine spares kit and replacing the faceplate. And really that's all there is to the seawater cooling side of this engine. Every engine is serviced on the day of departure, and in the space of a week there is really no need to perform any routine maintenance at all. But if you wish to, or if your charter is for a much longer period, then from time to time you may wish to check the oil, expansion tank and drive belt. To check the oil level, the engine has a dipstick just like a car. It has a yellow top, just here. It has a high mark and a low mark, and the oil level should be between the two. There is a bottle of oil in the cockpit locker if it needs topping up, but please be advised that the sumps on these engines are very small, so please add a small quantity, recheck, and if necessary add more. The oil goes in here. If you want to check the heat exchanger, then when the engine is cold, and only when the engine is cold, take off this cap that looks like a radiator cap, and the fresh water level should be about 10 to 15 centimetres beneath the neck of that cap. If it needs topping up, it's just tap water, fresh water. And you can, if you wish, check the drive belt. The batteries on this boat are all located in the starboard aft cabin underneath the bunk. There are 3 domestic batteries and 1 engine battery. The control switches, however, are in the port aft cabin, which is where we are now. The top right switch, labelled domestic, turns the domestic batteries on and off. When the switch is in the vertical position, as it is now, then that is on. Horizontal is off. The black switch just beneath it is for the negative side of the batteries and should never normally need to be touched. The bottom right red switch, labelled motor, is for the engine start battery. There is no need to turn it on or off, as the engine battery is isolated from the domestic batteries and cannot therefore be flattened by running the fridge or the lights at anchor. The top left red button is labelled shunt, and ordinarily this would be in the off position, like so. If you had a flat engine battery, then turning the shunt on will allow you to start the engine from the domestic batteries, but ordinarily this should not be required. The small black switch bottom left, labelled anchor windlass, is the power supply switch for the anchor windlass, and normally this would be left on, but it could be turned off to prevent children playing with it. But its main function is if the anchor becomes jammed whilst recovering it, this circuit breaker turns itself off to prevent any damage to the windlass. If that happens, just simply turn it back on and carry on. We're now at the navigator's table looking at the control panels. This top section, left hand side, is for shore power. Ordinarily, when the boat is on shore power, this gauge would read 240 volts and this LED would be lit, but we're not on shore power at this moment in time. The top left switch is for water heater, the next one down is battery charger and 240 volt sockets. These don't do anything. These three switches can be left on at all times. They won't do anything whilst we're not on shore power, but when you plug in, it saves you having to remember to switch them on again. The bottom section is for 12 volts and they're all clearly labelled. Down the left hand side we have navigation lights, engine light, which is a slightly misleading title, something lost in translation from the French. It's actually the steaming light. Anchor light, deck flood lights tricolour, cabin lights 1, 2, 3, 4. DC plug is for the 12 volt socket we'll have a look at in a moment. And on the right hand side, instrument lights, navigation instruments, VHF, GPS and autopilot. These are all linked together in a network system, so if any one is off, the others can do strange things. So think of that as one big switch, all 5 on or all 5 off. Just to the right of the panel we've looked at is another panel that looks quite similar. This rotary dial here allows you to choose between domestic battery, motor battery and auxiliary. There is no auxiliary. So you can check the voltage of the batteries on board. The next one along is consumption, to tell you how many amps you're taking out of the batteries at any moment in time. This device here is now redundant. You used to have to tell the boat which battery to charge with what and how. It's now fully automated. So if you're on shore power or the engine is running, it's charging all your batteries. This is the 12 volt cigarette lighter type socket for charging telephones and things. And then again the switches are clearly labelled. Bilge pump, water pressure pump for pressure at the taps, shower drain forward, shower drain aft. So when you've used the shower, it needs to be turned on there, and there is a small rubber covered switch inside the shower which when pressed will pump the grey water away. This is blanked off. The fridge, try and remember to turn it off when you're just under sail. It uses a lot of power, but if you're motoring or on shore power, please turn it on. It's extremely well insulated and will stay cold for a very long time. DVD player, spare switch, don't do anything, don't do anything. Working round to your right, there is a radio, CD player, MP3 player. Its main purpose is to enable you to get the weather, but it is nice to have some entertainment on board. Just beneath that are 4 USB ports for charging telephones and tablets, etc. Further along again to the right is the Raymarine plotter. So far all I've done is turn it on and wait for it to log on to the satellites. The major functions of this plotter are zoom in and zoom out, which alters the scale of the chart. The windows at the top show a current position in lat and long, speed over the ground, speed through the water, the wind instrument is repeated here, and depth under the keel. All our yachts measure depth under the keel. The draft of the boat is shown in the skipper's handbook and needs to be added to this depth shown in this window to give the actual depth of water. In this instance, the depth of water here is about 5.4 meters. The cursor, which is probably too small to see on this video, here of the boat shows our current position. And the nice function of these is if I move the cursor to where I wish to go to, So let's choose just off Ladies Rock as though we were going to go up the Sound of Mull. Without doing anything, it shows me in the top right corner to steer 266 degrees true for 6.09 nautical miles, and if I did that, it would take me exactly to where the cursor is now. If you find yourself off the page, if the boat isn't showing on the chart, just wait for it to redraw, press Find Ship on the soft keys, and it will put you back in the middle of the page. The VHF set on this boat is a standard Simrad VHF. The one thing that can catch people out is if you enter the channel number you wish, let's say channel 10, and put the number in, it looks like it's done it and then without any warning goes straight back to 16. The trick is to put the channel number in, followed by E for enter, and now it will stay there. The other function I should point out to you is on, off and volume, squelch control, and if you have a really serious situation, slide this to one side, press the distress button for 5 seconds or more, and providing the plotter is switched on, it will transmit an automatic mayday along with your precise location. There are 2 gas bottles on this yacht, which will be found in the cockpit up on deck. To light the cooker, the gas tap on the bottle must be open, and also the secondary gas tap, which is in the cupboard underneath the cooker as shown by the yellow label. Then to light the cooker, choose the dial for the burner that you wish, press it in, turn it clockwise, light it with the click stick or the matches provided, hold it for a count of 10 and then release. If you release it too early, the flame will not stay lit, in which case just repeat the process but hold the button in for a little longer. There are 3 water tanks on this particular boat and the capacities are shown in the skipper's handbook. The taps to open and close the various tanks are in a panel to the left of your knees when you sat at the navigation table. This panel has been removed, but as you can see the boat is not yet commissioned and ready for sea as there is nothing connected to these taps. Ordinarily 2 would be closed and 1 open. When you've used the tank that is open, close that tap, open one of the others, and you have used about 1/3 of your water supply. The heating controls on this boat are really simple. Turn it on or turn it off. Once it's running, you can choose the temperature you need with this rotary dial. It's diesel fired, it's a blown warm air system. You don't need to have the engine running to start it. It just works. It's very economical and works really well. All our boats have ITT Jabsco twist and lock pumps, which are reliable and easy to use. When you've used the toilet, move this lever to the right hand position and using the pump, about 10 or 15 strokes will empty the bowl. Move this switch to the left hand position and using the same pump again, another 15 or 20 strokes will rinse the bowl out and clear the pipes of the boat. None of our boats have holding tanks. They are all straight to ocean, so please don't use them in a marina. The toilets will handle anything that you've eaten and small amounts of toilet paper without an issue. Putting wet wipes or any sanitary products down the toilet will block it instantly. Okay, now let's go up on deck, press pause and make your way to the bows and we'll have a look at the anchor. The anchor and windlass on Eloise contains 50 metres of chain, 50 metres of chain, which is marked every 10th metre. So at 10 metres there is 1 mark, 20 there are 2, and so on. Yellow plastic markers you're looking for, all apart from the 50 metre mark, which is red, just to give you a heads up you're coming to the end of the chain. The bitter end is tied to the boat securely with a length of rope, so it could be cut in an emergency. To operate the windlass, the controller is located down the right hand side of the anchor chain locker. And has 2 buttons, up and down. Please make sure the engine is running before you attempt to use this, partly because it consumes a terrific amount of power, but also it's good practice to make sure that you can start the engine before you pull the hook out of the ground. If you had complete power failure or an extremis, the anchor could be recovered manually by using the handle. This fits in top of the crown nut and allows it to be wound up manually. In practice though, it's much easier just to handball the chain up on deck. This handle can also be used to undo the crown nut, which will release the chain if you wish to lower it manually, but our strong recommendation is to let the electric windlass do the work for you. Eloise has been fitted with a brand new mainsail for this season, which contains 3 reefs, slab reefs, all of which are led back to the cockpit. The diesel filler on Eloise is located port midships. The forward water tank filler on Eloise is located on the port bow. Underneath the spray hood on the port side you will find a bank of clutches, which are all clearly labelled from furthest away to nearest: furling line to furl the genoa, main halyard, reef 2, reef 3, main sheet and port side traveller for the main sheet traveller car. On the starboard side you'll find another bank of clutches labelled spare, which is a spare halyard that has no specific purpose, reef 1, outhaul, vang, kicking strap, whichever you prefer, and starboard side traveller for the main sheet car. Standing at the wheel, the binnacle is in front of you, and at the left hand side you have depth, which is shown under the keel. The draft of this boat is 2.4, so the actual depth of water here is about 5.3. All Alba boats measure depth under the keel. Speed through the water, daily trip which resets itself every time you turn the power off. Wind, just off the starboard bow at the moment, 8.7 knots. And to your right hand side, the auto helm. Normally it's in standby mode, so just get onto the heading that you desire, press auto and it will hold that course. For small adjustments, plus and minus 1. For bigger adjustments, plus and minus 10. And if you want to have control back, press standby and control is returned to you. To start the engine, press the red button in the middle of the throttle lever in and select 1/2 to 3/4 throttle, either forward or astern, it doesn't matter. By pressing the red button in, we've effectively disconnected the gearbox. Now let's look at the engine control panel, which is to your left as you look at the engine control lever. To start the engine, turn the key anti-clockwise and hold against the spring for about 5 or 10 seconds. 5 seconds in warm weather, 10 seconds in cooler weather. Then release, turn clockwise, 1 click turns the power on, the second click starts the engine. Allow the engine to warm up a little and then return the throttle lever to tick over. The red button will pop out, and from then on moving the lever forward or astern without pressing the button will engage drive. Whilst the engine's running, if I press this button, the diesel gauge works, so currently we have a full tank of diesel. This only works whilst the engine's running and the button is pressed. To stop the engine, pull the T-bar out, push it back in, turn the power off. The most important thing to check once you've started the engine is that there is a good flow of cooling water coming out of the exhaust, which is on the starboard quarter. This is the seat behind the wheel where the helmsman would normally sit or stand. It also contains the access point for the emergency steering. If there was any problem with the steering system, Remove this disc with a winch handle and insert the large metal post that is in the cockpit locker directly onto the rudder stock, and she becomes a tiller steered boat. If you have to travel any distance in this fashion, you can lash a dinghy oar to the tiller to give you more leverage and a more comfortable passage. The life raft on this yacht is located in a cabinet built into the sugar scoop. You can just see the lid held in an open position here, but unfortunately we can't actually see the life raft. The painter of the life raft is tied to the boat, and if you need to use it, it's a question of opening the sugar scoop and throwing the box into the water. As it drifts away from the boat, it will pull the painter tight, which will inflate the life raft. Then you can use the painter to pull it back to the boat, all climb in, and then cut yourselves free. If the boat went down without anybody doing anything, it will float free. There are 2 further water tank fillers on Eloise located starboard midships. All the water tanks will be full on your arrival, and we would ask you to refill them when you return the boat. Please take all the dock lines with you that are not shackled to the pontoon, and also take the shore power lead with you to allow you to access shore power at a different marina. Before you leave, please call into the office and have a look at the tidal stream plan for the marina, which will help you have a safe and stress-free departure. When you return the boat, please return it to any of the berths on leg F, Foxtrot, and before you do that, your last job is to fill the diesel tank. The diesel station is the yellow box located on leg D, D for diesel, and you can contact the marina on channel 16 or 37 to arrange that. We hope you have a wonderful holiday. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have, and we hope you have a wonderful voyage. Thank you for your time.